Hi everyone, and welcome back to our Surviving COVID-19 series. As usual, I'm Bianca, I'm here, and Freya is also here with us.
Hi everyone.
Today we will be covering Module 2, which is all about routine. You're going to hear us chatting about routine lots throughout the series, so we thought we'd do a whole module dedicated to it so we kind of know exactly what we're talking about when we're talking about routine.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're going to go a deep dive into maybe how to do a good routine and incorporate that into your life, and maybe some of the sort of pitfalls that you might come across when trying to implement a routine.
Great. Okay, so before we get into routine, we might just have a quick recap from last week. So last week we spoke about all the different emotional responses to the current situation and how a lot of them are really normal, responses. We did talk a little bit, about how all these emotions are normal in general, but you might be feeling them a little bit more at the moment. We talked a little bit around ways to manage these emotions and to help us, cope better with what's going on. And you'll see that nice little picture there on the side. So it might be a nice time now to just check in with yourself, think about how you're feeling physically and mentally. What's taking up most of your headspace right now? What have you been thinking about? How are your energy levels? Are you feeling tired or are you feeling okay? Think about if you're coping okay with the stress and if you're finding ways to manage, and maybe think about whether you've implemented some of those things that we talked about last week. And what support do you need right now? Because that's kind of the important part, right? It's identifying how we're feeling and what we actually need to do for ourselves in order to be coping better. So with all of that in mind, I thought it would be a good time to think about what we focused on last week. So at the end of the last module, we kind of asked you guys to set an intention and think about what you might like to achieve over the next week, whether it be a strategy that we talked about last week or something like that. So just have a little bit of a mental check-in with yourself and see if, you did implement that, if you'd like to implement it better, how you might do it a little bit differently next week. Just have a bit of a check-in about how you went with that. And while you're doing that, Freya, how did you go with your intention last week? I know we were kind of talking about boundaries with your friends and kind of, about reducing the amount that you're talking about COVID. How did that go?
Yeah, I think I can still make some improvements, but I made the deliberate sort of conscious effort to try and shift conversation towards other sort of topics this week. It's like a work in progress, I suppose. So I'll keep going. But at the moment, I think it's been sort of helpful to start to have conversations about other things as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so
what about you?
Sorry, have you noticed any shifts in yourself because of, putting in that boundary?
I think it's been helpful to sort of just give myself some space from thinking about it as well. So while it's like me trying to shift that conversation away from, what's happening in the news and the situation all the time, it's giving me a little bit of mental space too.
Nice, great.
Yeah. So how did you go, Bianca? What was your intention last week?
Mine was around my media consumption. So I had said last week that I had been doing the timer on my phone for the press conference in the morning.
Yeah.
Setting an alarm for 10 minutes. So I just got kind of the really relevant information to me and then turned it off. So that's been going well. I've been doing that every day. And some days I haven't even been watching the press conference. I just kind of look at the numbers later. And the other thing was kind of trying to, consciously not click on all the news articles that come up on my newsfeed because they're everywhere and are so tempting to kind of jump in and have a look at everything that's going on. But I was finding it was making me really anxious. So I feel like I've improved, definitely. I'm not clicking on all of them. I think this week, though, I'm actually going to unfollow a bunch of the pages that I follow because I'm finding it is just kind of clogging up. All of my kind of social media is just full of articles. So I think I'm actually going to go and unfollow some of those pages this week.
Yeah, it's a really good idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can just unfollow them and you can follow them again if you want to in the future, but giving yourself some space.
Yeah. But I have found that it's made me a bit less anxious during the day, just kind of trying not to click on all of the stuff I'm seeing.
Yeah, well, that's great. All right, we'll see how it goes next week then, if we continue on with these sort of intentional practices that we're doing about coping and managing with our emotions at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're talking about routine today, and we've already mentioned it last week, and we're going to keep mentioning it, I suppose, in the coming weeks. But today is really about the nuts and bolts of routine. And let's just think a little bit about why routine is so important at the moment, and in general, I guess, throughout COVID, why it's been so important. So with the restrictions that we're currently experiencing and we've experienced in the past, it's removed lots of our normal activities, lots of our responsibilities, connections, and ultimately it's kind of, I guess, broken down that routine that we would normally have. And so while it might have felt sort of nice to have a bit of extra time to sort of sleep in, or, you know, a bit more free time to watch TV, as it's gone on, I think we can all notice that we're craving that stability that we had through our normal sort of daily routines. And one thing that is so helpful about routine is that it's really containing. So it helps us know what's to be expected for the day, and it's really predictable. So we know what's coming up. There's some level of stability in our lives. And so that's really helpful in managing anxiety and stress. Because when there's so much out of our control, like we spoke about last week, it's really helpful to focus on what is in our control. And what really is in our control is our routine. On top of that, routine is really helpful for improving low mood. Lots of times at the clinic, we'll talk to people about, you know, how are you going with your routine? How much are you doing day to day? And it's the real foundational level to start on to build up your mood and, I guess, energy and motivation levels. Yeah, so I guess I'll talk a little bit about that in terms of like motivation, because I think often we think that we need to wait for motivation to start doing activities. I'll do exercise when I feel motivated, or I'll start studying when that motivation comes. I'm just not feeling motivated right now, so I'm not going to do it. That sort of makes sense logically, you'd think that that would be the way that it works. But what we find is actually the reverse. We find that actually if you do the activity, even if you're not feeling motivated, you're going to feel motivated after doing it in and of itself by doing activities. I don't know if you've ever noticed that, Bianca, that you feel sort of more motivated from doing things.
Absolutely. And I think it's a cycle that we talk about quite a lot in psychology. You'll notice, you get into that slump and you don't want to do it, but actually by not doing it, it puts you further in that slump. And so, it is a vicious cycle, and it's about breaking out of it. And, that comes from pushing through it when you really don't want to do something. But yeah, you're right. Definitely there's been many, many days where I feel like, I don't want to go for a walk today. And then I push through and do it, and I feel good. I feel really good. And then I want to do it again the next day. So yeah, you're right. It is just breaking out of that cycle.
Yeah, definitely. To begin with, it's about breaking out of that cycle. And hopefully once we've sort of got an established routine, it's just like one of those things you do. So it doesn't take that extra level of energy and motivation to get going, because you're like, okay, I know at 4:00 when the day ends, that's when I go for my walk, whatever it is. So routine is really about having that regular, expected schedule to your day, which maybe sounds a little bit dull, but actually is really helpful. In like your motivation, energy levels, and mood, all of those things are really helpful for it. Okay, so a lot of it is about then habit formation. So I guess when we think about what habits we've fallen into, whether it's ones that we like or we don't like, sleeping in, waking up, that regularity and predictability is really helpful to form the habits that you want to form. And I guess what we're going to be talking about today is, what type of habits and what type of schedule, what type of life really would you like to have? And it's about starting to work towards that life that you want by gradually implementing, small steps to move towards that bigger goal. You know what? It really gives you a sense of satisfaction as well, having a routine, wake up in the morning, have my morning coffee, then I go to work for 6 hours or whatever it is, feel really good after doing that. I feel like a sense of productivity and like a sense of success in my day. And even more so is the fact that you have set an intention and you've followed through on that intention. And that can be really powerful to see that you can honor your promises to yourself, because it can be really tough to do. But when you do follow through on those promises you've made, it can be so rewarding and so profound and give you a sense of success and what's the word I'm looking for? Sense of, I guess, like ownership over your own life.
Yeah.
Like you are an active chooser of what happens in your life.
Yeah. It's almost kind of like taking responsibility and being accountable.
Yeah. And being accountable to yourself, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's a lot of what's happening right now. Like, I guess a lot of the time going to work, going to school, there's a lot of other people that you might be accountable to. You know, like I have to come to work. That's sort of expected. But at the moment, we need to show up for ourselves, and it's ourselves who are going to be accountable and who are going to reap the rewards or reap the difficulties. So in short, what I'm trying to say is that having a routine is a great way to look after your mental health, can help retain your productivity and really work towards your goals that you'd like to have in your life.
Yeah, great.
So what is important in a routine? If we're going to really break it down to like a small section or the big chunks of it, there's three really important aspects that we're going to talk about implementing into our routine regularly. So one of the types of activities that you need to focus on and find ways to put into your life is enjoyment, like activities that give you a real sense of pleasure. So it could be watching a TV show, it could be reading a good book, making a nice cup of tea, having a long shower. It's those things that just in and of themselves, they're inherently rewarding and inherently lovely. Like, yeah, having a nice dinner or something like that. And while it might seem obvious that that's something you need to do, it's really important to find times to put that into your routine at the moment. At the same time, we really need to find ways to be productive. And it's going to be different for every single one of us during lockdown, because I know a lot of us maybe don't even have jobs. You know, we've lost our jobs at the moment. So that sense of productivity might be really shifted. But what's important is that we find activities that can still give you a sense of satisfaction or achievement when you have done them. It's like when you've done like an assignment or something, you're like, oh, I feel so good. I got that done. I'm really proud of myself. So I guess productive, it could be, it could be normally going to work. If you're still going to work, finding that time to do those things, get those things ticked off the list, or studying, schoolwork, those things give you that sense of productivity. But if you don't have those things in your life, other ways you can try and work them into your routine is to find a hobby that you have to sort of show some mastery. So work hard and you learn a new song on the guitar. Maybe you clean the house and it looks really lovely afterwards. So those things, while maybe not as obvious as work, they do also give us that sense of productivity and achievement. Another thing to think about is exercise, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, but exercise is just so important in general for your mental health, your physical health. And while we're not doing a lot of incidental exercise, we really need to intentionally schedule that into our routines more regularly. And the last one that we need to try and schedule in and is really important is connection. Again, this is probably something that we would normally get, really casually and incidentally by going to our workplaces, picking up our kids from school, walking to, the shops or whatever it is that you would normally be doing. Those things we don't have. So we're really lacking that sense of connection right now. And again, I totally acknowledge that it's not the same as being in person, and physical touch is still lacking, and that's really important too. But it's still good to try and maintain some simulation or some approximation of that connection that we can get. So whether that's doing a Zoom call or a FaceTime or even just a normal phone call, it's really good to try and schedule that into your routine. And a good way of doing that is to have like an activity that it's based around, or like a regular night. So like Sunday, if Sunday's your roast day where you do like a family roast together, get everybody on the Zoom call and schedule in a family dinner together, all eating dinner at the same time with your laptops or something like that. Maybe you and your friends are really into reading. Maybe now is the time to try and create some space and time to catch up with your friends about books that you're reading. Or even, I know a lot of people have probably done this and they're probably bored to death of trivia nights, but there's a reason why people have been doing them, because they give us that sense of connection and that sense of fun and community that we're really lacking at the moment.
Yeah.
I think they're all, like, they seem a bit obvious, but I think it's really worth saying that we need to have all three of these things scheduled into our days regularly, to have like a well-balanced routine, and it's all about the balance.
Yeah, and I think they kind of they work together too. You could do things like setting tasks to get done, and then at the end of that period of time, then you get to do something enjoyable, so you can make it really rewarding and feel really motivating, by I guess playing with how you want to incorporate these into your routine as well. But I think with the connections too, that's an easy one to let slide, and I think a lot of people sometimes will opt out of that sort of stuff, but I think it's really important to make a concerted effort to connect with people, because that's really important right now, and it's something that's really lacking. Like Freya said, we're not getting all that incidental connection with people, and so we really need to make an effort to do it, I guess, ourselves.
Definitely. And it's great if you guys, like, if you can keep in contact texting, and I'm sure a lot of young people are doing that as well. I think that's fantastic, but I think it's really important to have that voice or video call as well.
Yeah,
it's on a different level, and it's as close as we can get right now to normal face-to-face interactions. Yeah.
All right, so now we're moving on to how to get started. So the first thing to consider would be to consider what you're already doing. So think about each activity and kind of what you've been doing. Think about what you'd like to continue doing and what sort of things you'd maybe like to leave behind. We've talked a lot, I guess, about routine in general. I think it's important to think about, how school and work really shape our day and our life, right? When we're doing these things all the time, outside of COVID, when we're able to go to the office or able to go to school, there is this really nice structure in our day. Every point in time is punctuated by something. And so, it's important to think about how that works in that environment and how that works for you in that environment, and incorporate some of that stuff over. So think about what you're doing. Are you getting up at a good time? Are you getting, to the table to start work at a good time? What is helping you at the moment and what's hindering you? And, I think it'd be important to kind of put those things down on paper or somewhere, think about it, and think about, what do I want to move forward doing? What's helping me and what's not helping me?
Definitely. Is that hour of TikTok I'm watching every morning helpful? Probably not for me.
But it's about balance too. And like you were saying before, with enjoyment, it might be okay, well, if I get my morning stuff done at 11 o'clock, I can go on TikTok for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
It's about balancing things out,
It is. It's all about that balance.
Yeah, we're not trying to say don't do anything that you find fun or relaxing, or sometimes it's nice to just kind of zone out and watch TikTok or whatever it is, but it needs to be balanced. I think that's the important part. So the next one is write down a list of activities under each category that you'd like to incorporate in your schedule. So the categories that Freya was talking about before. So just write a list of what you might like to include in each of those categories, and how you might incorporate that into your routine. The way you do your routine is completely up to you. You can just think about it. You can write it on a whiteboard. You could type it up, all of those sorts of things can be helpful just to keep you accountable and keep you sticking to those things. But it would be helpful to, write down the list of activities and then slot them into time slots on a routine, a visual routine that might be helpful for you. And put it somewhere, make yourself accountable, take responsibility for it, and that will help you kind of stick to it. Find regular times each day or week to complete these activities. So like we said, creating kind of a predictable schedule, sticking to your work hours, that one's really important. So making sure you have a dedicated start time, a dedicated finish time, and breaks in between, and really making an effort to stick to it. Because I know, as you're working from home, those emails start coming through later. You know, you're like, oh, maybe I'll just jump back on for a second. And we will be talking about, you know, work boundaries and that sort of stuff next week. But just, you know, try and make sure you're sticking to that start time and finish time, because it's going to be really important for your mental health that you are kind of taking the time to have a break and reset overnight, and you're not working kind of 24 hours a day, because you wouldn't be doing that if you're at the office.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting what you're saying as well, Bianca, just a moment ago about, you know, if you're going to print off your schedule to make yourself accountable. That's really true. You know, if you're a visual person and that's the way that you're going to remember to do it, stick it on your wall. Maybe it's more helpful for you to set like timers, like maybe you use like your phone calendar where you can get like a reminder 15 minutes beforehand just to remind yourself how you're going, to check in even like.
Yeah, exactly. And it's completely up to you how exactly you want to do it. Some people have, diaries, like physical diaries, and they write things in. Some people might print a routine. Some people might have calendar invites in their phone, whatever it is, that's okay. But I think, it can be really helpful to watch your day going by and ticking off those activities. I think that can be really motivating for a lot of people, and gives you that sense of accomplishment. Like, yeah, I've done this stuff today. And, even if everything doesn't get done, if you've got 10 things on your list and you've done 8, that's amazing.
Yeah, definitely. Couldn't agree more.
And then for more difficult tasks, like we were kind of talking about, writing lists. So breaking big things down into small, manageable chunks. And like we were just saying, to build that sense of momentum, to build that sense of achievement, ticking things off, because it's easy to put a massive thing on your calendar, right? So it might be do this project. You're probably not going to get that done in a day or half a day or whatever allocated time you've given. So it can be really helpful to break it down into smaller tasks, and schedule those in so you can tick them off as you go. As you could imagine, it would be nicer and probably feel more motivating to tick each part of that project off as you're going than to get to the end of the day and go, oh, I can't tick off that I've done the project because I haven't finished it. So I think with those big things, try and break them down. It'll feel more manageable and you'll feel more motivated when you're ticking little bits off.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, and I think we're all sort of like working towards bigger sort of goals, and like when it is like that, it can be hard to find out like, how do I get started? It's like such a big job to do.
Exactly.
But if you start smaller in the smaller little chunks to be like, okay, well, you know what? Actually, the first thing I need to do is just read my email. Okay, do that.
And it is about scheduling those little things that you wouldn't think to schedule in. So reading the email, doing some research, those little things that you do along the way. But actually scheduling them in and ticking them off, it'll feel really nice and it'll feel really motivating.
Yeah, and a good place to start, I guess, as well, is to be like, all right, let's write down what I have done today after you've done it. Like if we're trying to figure out what your routine is already, first few days, write down what have I done in that hour? What did I do? Wow, actually, look how many things I've done today. If I break it down into smaller things, like that's actually pretty good. And then to sort of build up and to be like, okay, well, this is what my routine looks like now. How do I think that's going? And where do I want to go from here? Maybe I'm actually doing a really good job already.
Yeah, exactly. And it might just be a matter of putting it down on paper so you've got it somewhere so you know exactly what you want to keep doing. But yeah, you're right. It's just about writing it down and figuring out, do I want to keep doing it exactly like this, or maybe I want to make a few changes?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so you've thought about where you want to get started, and you've thought about maybe some of the things that you want to do, what activities you want to try and incorporate into your routine and your life right now. How are we going to keep on track now that we've decided that we want to have a routine? I think the place to start is to start small. We don't want to have this fantastic goal, and it's great to have a goal, but we don't want to try and do this huge thing when we're started off from a low, like a smaller place. Like if the idea is that you want to run a marathon, you're not going to start out by having a goal of running 30 kilometers. You're going to start with just running 100 meters or whatever it is. It's going to be something smaller, but there's steps towards that. So think about where your routine is now already. If you've noticed that actually you spend, like 6 hours on the couch or whatever it is, you're not going to be saying, I'm going to be productive for 7 hours today. That's probably not a realistic place to start. And that doesn't mean you can't work towards that, but a more realistic place to start is to say, you know what, I'm going to get up and have a shower, and then I'm going to have breakfast this morning. And actually, I'm going to feel really good about that, because yesterday I didn't do that at all. And this is a real step for me towards working towards that bigger goal of cleaning the house, you know? So it is about being realistic and about, I guess, acknowledging when you have done a good job. And we'll talk about that as well, like rewarding yourself after you have done it, you know, being like, you know what, Freya, good on you for getting up this morning and going for a walk, because you haven't been doing that lately, but you've been wanting to do it. So well done for doing that. So I think just remember that it's okay to acknowledge and be really real about where you're at right now. And that's okay, because that's the place we're starting from.
Yeah. And I think on that, you know, setting realistic goals, you know, for example, the example you gave with running a marathon and starting with 30 kilometers, you're setting yourself up to feel really bad about yourself.
Yeah.
You know, when you set this huge goal and you don't get there, you're going to feel really disappointed, and you're not going to want to keep going. Your motivation is going to go down because you're like, I can't do it anyway. So setting those really small goals can also give you a sense of achievement and make you, you know, motivated to continue on your, I guess, journey of, you know, small goals.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I guess we want to try and set ourselves up as best as possible to have that sense of success, right?
Yeah.
We want to give ourselves the best chance, because you know what? It's actually really hard to start creating a new habit. Like, that's difficult. As human beings, we really like what we're already doing. We like it because we know it and we know what's happening. So we're like, this is safe. This is where I'm at. Change is hard.
It is.
So we need to give ourselves that best opportunity, because our human nature wants to try and revert back to the status quo. And in the beginning, it's going to be difficult, and you're going to have some setbacks. You're going to have some pushback from yourself. You're going to be like, it's not worth it. It's too hard. Whatever it is, those thoughts will come up, because this is challenging to create a new routine and a new habit. But I guess the important part is to think, you know what? It's what happens next after I do that. So after I do have a setback where I didn't get up and have a shower today, does that mean the rest of my day is a write-off? Does that mean I'm just going to give up on that routine now? Or does that mean that today was a hard day and that's okay, and tomorrow's a new day and I'm going to give it a new go? So yeah, really trying to just let some setbacks happen, but it doesn't mean that we're back to square one.
Yeah.
So again, to make it a lot easier to keep going, schedule in regular breaks while we are working from home, learning from home, all those things. We don't have set break times. And I'm sure this probably works for people when they do go to work as well. I know a lot of people don't actually have breaks. They just sit at their computer and have lunch, but it is important to have a break. It's time for your brain to sort of like switch off a little bit and calm down, because we can't concentrate for a really long period of time. It's not how our brains work. They need some downtime. And also giving yourself that reward after doing something hard is so important, and it's going to make it more likely that you're going to do it again.
Yeah, for sure. You're probably going to be more productive taking breaks. I know people kind of don't take breaks because they feel like they'll be more productive just working straight through, but it very often works the other way around.
Yes, definitely. And then another thing to think about is, we've spoken about, you know, productivity and working towards challenging new goals and things like that, which is so important. But another really important part of your routine is self-care.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we hear a lot about self-care, and it's like, you know, oh, self-care, treat yourself. That's not all it's about. Self-care is really about, I guess, setting aside some time just for yourself, to give yourself some care, self-care. And so it's about, I guess, resting and reinvigorating yourself and giving yourself that opportunity to have some time to look after yourself. And it doesn't have to be like a face mask, but it can be a face mask. You know, it can be lots of different things. It could be for you. It could be exercising. You know, you got a busy day with the kids learning from home, and then maybe you give yourself just half an hour out of the day away from the kids to say, guys, I'm shutting this door and I'm doing exercise. I'm doing my HIIT YouTube class, half an hour. This is my time for myself. And maybe that's what works for you to have some sanity. You know, it could be, these are like some really general ones that people start with, you know, meditating, that really like checking in with yourself, slowing down, being really mindful of how you're going and how you're feeling. Another one is like a gratitude journal. I think that could be really helpful right now. With so much going on, that's really tough to actually check in to be like, well, you know what actually am I grateful for right now? Or it could be baking, and I included that because that's my self-care.
Yeah.
But whatever it is, and if you don't know what it is yet, just like think about the activities that you feel really good after and you feel like, yourself, more yourself than you have before. Whatever those activities are, try and incorporate them into your routine. And it's not just once a week sort of thing. It's like a regular thing. It's like a daily thing if you can do it. And it doesn't have to be half an hour. It doesn't have to be an hour. It can even be just 5 minutes for yourself each day.
Yeah. And I think what you just said is really important. I think self-care has been kind of commercialized a little bit. And so when we think about self-care, we think about, beautiful bath bombs and face masks and all this sort of stuff. But it can be anything that makes you feel good after. And so, it can be as simple as having a cup of tea. It can be as simple as, and I know, there's lots of busy parents kind of probably thinking, how am I going to do self-care? But it can be having a shower for 2 minutes and just being really mindful in the shower and enjoying that, small moment that you have to yourself. I know there's not a lot of time for a lot of people, but it can be a really small amount of time, just something for you.
Yeah. So small, but so powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's not selfish as well, I should say. It is not selfish to have some time for self-care.
Yeah, you absolutely need it to keep going.
Yeah, especially at the moment.
Yeah.
And another one, and I know we've all probably heard this, is don't forget to include exercise. And it doesn't have to be a huge amount of exercise, doesn't have to be an hour of running, it can just be a walk around the block. But moving your body is so helpful for your mental health and your physical health. It has really good, science about, maintaining mental health and helping to get back on track with like all sorts of things with anxiety and depression. So really try and make some time for exercise and find what works for you.
Yeah, and like you were talking about before, Freya, it can look so different for everyone. Think outside the box, do something a little bit different. Yes, it can be walking around the block, going for a run, doing those sorts of things. But it can also be, having a dance party with your kids or playing hopscotch out the back, it can be any of those little things. So just maybe even think about how to include moving your body in your daily routine. It might be at lunchtime, we have a break and we eat, and then we go outside and we play cricket for, I don't know, 15 minutes. All those little things. Think outside the box. There's lots of YouTube videos that, are for adults or kid friendly as well. So there's lots of different ways, I guess, to incorporate exercise and make it fun.
Yes, so true. And with all of these things, be creative, think outside the box, like you say, Bianca. Find ways that work for you, that are going to be sustainable for you to keep going.
Yeah. All right, finally we have sleep. So sleep's really important, I guess, in maintaining routine. And I think it's one of the first things that starts to slip, especially I think as we went into lockdown, everyone was kind of like, yes, can stay up a little bit later, get a bit of a later sleep in, all of those sorts of things. So it can be something that can creep later and later and later and later. Without you even realizing it. And then you get to a point where you're like, oh my God, I'm going to bed at 3 a.m. and what have I done with my time? And then it's kind of hard to pull it back. So keeping a normal sleep routine is really important in getting good sleep. So good quality sleep comes from having a really good sleep routine. So these are just some tips around sleep in general. So the routine leading up to bedtime is also really important. So setting ourselves up to be ready for bed, to be ready to get a really good quality sleep. So the first thing is consider limiting technology. You've probably heard this before, but it can be really effective in helping you get off to sleep more easily and getting a better quality sleep. So, think about things like phones, TVs, laptops, that sort of stuff. And think about a reasonable time to turn all of those things off. You might even set a rule, no phones in bed, because I know that's a big one that comes up quite a lot. So consider that kind of technology use around bedtime. The next one is stop eating before bedtime. So it can be kind of tempting, I guess, to have that late night snack before we go to bed. But actually eating before bedtime is not helpful to getting good quality sleep. So again, maybe start thinking about, okay, what time do I usually stop eating? Is that giving me enough time to kind of digest before I'm going to bed? And set a limit, I won't eat after 8 or 8:30 or whatever it is. And this also includes things like caffeine as well. So think about what time you're finishing with your coffees of a day. Think about whether your tea is caffeinated or not, and whether those things might be affecting your sleep as well. So just consider some of those things. And then activities to calm down. So things like having a warm shower, a warm cup of tea, or mindfulness meditation before bed. If you are having tea, maybe try and make sure it's not caffeinated, because that's probably not going to be super helpful for you to wind down, especially if you're a bit sensitive to caffeine. That can really affect you. Some people, it's person to person, I guess, with the tea stuff, but uncaffeinated would probably be best before bed. But yeah, it could be, just winding down, having a warm shower, having a reflect on your day, going about that process quite mindfully before hopping into bed.
I really like slowing down, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's kind of, I guess, almost processing your day and getting ready, to go off to sleep in a really relaxed state. And, there's lots of little like YouTube videos on mindfulness meditations and stuff like that. Lots of audio stuff that you can just listen to and fall asleep to, or, you might do it while you're in the shower. There's lots of different ways to do it. So again, just being creative around how can I use my time best to wind down and process my day and get ready for sleep. In terms of actual sleep, so keep your bed a place for sleeping. I think I've talked about this 100 times to clients before, because actually what happens is your body associates your bed with sleeping. And then as soon as you start doing activities other than sleeping on your bed, your body is like, oh, bed, awake. And so, you don't get this association of bed means, tired, relaxed, sleepy time. It starts to actually go the other way, and it thinks, okay, I need to be alert and awake, especially if you're doing things like studying or on the laptop, like organizing things when you're quite alert. Your body will start to associate bedtime with alertness. So just consider that. Try and keep the bed just for sleeping. If you're struggling getting to sleep, we like to do this thing, which is sleep procrastination, which is get out of bed. So basically don't lay there awake, kind of just thinking, oh my God, I can't get to sleep. Oh my God, I can't get to sleep. And I know we've all been there, we've all done it. But actually a really effective way to manage this is to get out of bed and then do something really boring. So it might be folding your washing. It might be sweeping the kitchen. We don't want to do anything engaging. We want to do something really boring and monotonous that will make us feel like tired and like we want to go back to bed. So if you can't sleep, get out of bed, do something really, really boring. When you feel tired, get back into bed. If you can't sleep after 30 minutes, get back out and do it again. Eventually, your body will get tired enough that you will just go to sleep. But we don't want to just be laying in bed awake, because again, that's not good for the body association in terms of sleep and wake. Yeah,
for sure.
Getting sunlight during the day is a huge one for sleeping. It actually kicks off our body clock. So especially in the morning when you're waking, it's important to try and get a little bit of sun, because it does start our body clock ticking and tells us in however many hours it's time to go to sleep. So getting some sunlight during the day can be really important for your body clock to know it's daytime and then when it will be time for bed. And actually the melatonin will kick in, a certain number of hours after you've gotten the sunlight. So it is really important to get some sunlight in your day.
Mm-hmm.
And then try to get some time before starting work or school to do something for yourself. So something like a morning routine. So like I was talking about with the sleep kind of creeping forward, staying up later, sleeping in later. A way to kind of manage that is to just set a wake up routine. So I'm going to be up at this time, I'm going to do this routine in the morning, and then I'm going to get on with my day. By doing that, you set your morning routine, you're going to be tired in the nighttime, right? So what happens is when we stay up later, we sleep in later. If we cut that back, you're going to be tired and you're going to fall asleep earlier. So setting a really good morning routine is really helpful to maintaining your sleep pattern.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully today, everyone, we gave you a good place to start and some ideas for how you can maybe monitor or update your routine, especially during lockdown, and maybe some ways that you can make it more helpful and meaningful for you each day. I wonder if you took anything away from today, Bianca, anything that you thought was helpful.
Yeah, I thought the whole thing was helpful. I think routine is one of those big things that, we always come back to. And, like we're talking about, the structure of, going to work and going to school is so, it is so structured without us even realizing. So it's really important to build that structure into our day when we are kind of working from home. But something that I will be doing is making kind of a checklist for my day. And making sure, that includes things like breaks and stuff like that. But I think I really like the idea of, ticking things off and feeling really motivated and feeling that sense of achievement, like I want to keep going. And I think because we've been in lockdown for so long, motivation falls off, more and more as we go. So I'm really going to try the checklist, and I'm going to try, stay really motivated, and celebrate those small wins that come up as I'm kind of ticking things off.
Sounds like a really good idea.
Yeah. What are you going to try?
I think I'll try and schedule in regular breaks. I might try and have like a set time to sort of break up the day. I find myself sometimes feeling a bit lagging as it gets to midday. So maybe if I can have a regular sort of break, it will keep me engaged throughout the day.
Yeah. And I guess you can report back and tell us how that went with your productivity, because that's usually what people are worried about.
Yeah, definitely. I'm keen to hear how yours goes next week as well.
Great. Sounds good.
Well, we hope to see you all next time in Module 3, which we will be focusing on working from home and learning from home, and maybe some strategies to make it a little bit easier.
Cool. We'll see you all next week.
See you then. Bye.